Hello, welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. And some big news, I guess not really coming from the NFL. We really don't have much this week for the NFL anyway, but they're having their owners meeting, and they're talking about getting rid of the Pro Bowl, or at least making changes to it. And the main one that they're talking about getting rid of is the tackling portion of the game. So I don't really know what that would look like, but I already hate it because, like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna want me to tune in and watch what? Flag football? Touch? Like a 7-on-7? Is it gonna be just a 7-on-7? What do you think, Matt? Are you interested in that change, or should they scrap it?
Well, I just think there's so much right now that there's no incentive of playing in it. Like, other than they get the vacation, and for some of them, it's contractually tied in that if they make the Pro Bowl, they're going to get bonuses. If that's not in your contract, and then you blow your knee out, like especially for the guys that are close to contract years, you suffer an injury in that game, and it puts you in a really bad spot. So I can understand why they've gone away from it, because I think some of the lure of being named to the Pro Bowl, because a lot of those guys, like anymore, the way that they have it structured, they're just saying, well, we're in the playoffs, so we're opting out, so you're not even getting the top guys there to begin with. I think changing that structure to almost like what some of the skill set was from some of those skills tournaments, I think that can make for something interesting where you're seeing like who the most accurate quarterback is, who the fastest running backs and things like that. I'm not saying that injuries can't happen there, but you're not getting the contact type injuries. I mean, it may be something. I know that the way that the Pro Bowl has been played and the way that it's just randomly been thrown on TV, I don't think that it's marketed well.
Yeah, well, that's because they've changed it, where it used to be like the week after the Super Bowl. Now it's in between. But let's be honest, most people are more focused on getting ready for the Super Bowl, right? So, like, I think it's just an afterthought where, like, if my man Tom Brady's playing, I'm focused on watching him. I know he's not even going to be in the game. And to be honest, if they moved it, I wouldn't even have known anyway, right? So, like, it's always on. The time doesn't seem to be consistent where, like, you know, like, hey, it's going to be on at like 1 p.m. or 7 p.m. It's always like thrown into, it seems like a weird like 4 p.m. or something. And maybe I'm wrong. I just don't know. Like, it's just so hard to follow. It's not a staple anymore. I did think through one scenario that might be interesting to me, and I don't know how the NFL would have to make this work. But I think they already have, like, what, 6 quarterbacks, maybe 8 quarterbacks as reserve. And if they're going to go, like, I don't want to see flag football, and I really don't want to see touch. Maybe they're showing flag football if they decide to go that route as a way to get kids to play flag football. So there's, like, one game a year where they can be like, oh, yeah, that's the kind of football I play. And so they might tune in. But I would rather see just a 7-on-7 tournament. Not even, the games don't even have to be that long. Like the first round, if you had 8 quarterbacks, those are the teams. Like, they pick the teams. You have to have 2 linemen or whatever, like, because whatever the numbers would end up being, you have to have 2 linemen, one tight end / wide receiver / running back, whatever the numbers need to be to work out, where they can kind of do a draft, and then they play the game, and that's it. And then whatever, first team to 5, you kind of just score it or whatever. First team like 5 or to 7, whatever you want to end up doing. Because I'm thinking if they have 8 teams, you could have it. What time? How long does a normal game last? 3 hours? 4 hours?
Yeah.
If you had the other teams ready to go, so you're just playing back to back, I would think that they'd be able to score like 5 touchdowns pretty quick going back and forth, you know. So maybe like a half hour per game. Not even a half hour, I don't think. 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
I think they could replace the game itself. And tell me what you think of this. Replace it with a toilet bowl. And just have the Super Bowl is going to be the following week. So have the worst 2 teams play. And then the winner gets the number 1 overall pick. Now it's not like, well, we suck, so now our season. I'm like, no, you're going to wait till after the playoffs and you're going to play one more game. So you don't just get to start your vacation early.
See, that would be funny, but I don't think I would tune in for that because I'm like, do I really want to watch shit football? No. But I would watch where if you had the bottom team and then they got to play the national champion of college football, I don't know why they would want to do that because like they're going to probably sit out anyway. But like, let's say if they, I don't know how much they pay. How much were they paying winners for the Pro Bowl? Was it like $500,000?
I don't know.
Because they were paying that money. But could you imagine if like you won the national championship at Georgia and they're like, hey, like you guys got what, 10 guys drafted? Awesome. But now you get a chance to play the Jaguars with Urban Meyer. You know his team was all garbage last year. And if you beat them, everyone on your team gets like the $500,000 or whatever. So like some guys that would never ever make the league, they might want to play in that college game. And I mean, actually, what they used to do, they had a college all-star team that played the worst team in the NFL? Or I don't even know if it was the worst team in the NFL. They just played a regular team. And the college had won in the past. So to me, that would be more interesting. Because like if you had kind of like a Senior Bowl type team playing the worst team in the NFL, and if the NFL team lost, then they also lose the overall number 1 pick. And it just slots down, like they get put back at 32. So like they have incentive too, where like if you're the coach, you're not going to just like blow it off and be like, oh yeah, so we're going to lose to these college dudes. I think that'd be more entertaining to me. I don't know why, and plus they still keep the winning money, right? Whatever they're paying, I'll look it up real quick and see if I can find what the NFL is doing. But they were paying teams out winning payouts Pro Bowl. What was it? Oh, of course, it's all things. Oh, so they made $80,000 each, which still, if you're a college player, that's not bad. The losing team got $40,000 apiece, right?
Okay.
So, like, let's say you're on that college Pro Bowl team, or like the super seniors or whatever, playing that worst team. I think that could work. Not as high as like my $500,000 or whatever, but I mean that makes more sense because there's like what 50 dudes on the team. But like, come on, some of those guys, they might never make a contract. You get injured, whatever. I mean, I guess you can get injured either way. So I don't know. I honestly, the tournament might work, but again, it's kind of like the NBA was kind of talking about that, and it's like, all right, so if you do play a 7-on-7 tournament, is it really going to be enough for me to tune in, right? Because that's going to be the difference. Where like they got to make it fun. They can't be throwing commercials in. Like you honestly have to have back-to-back, and the commercials have to kind of just be thrown in audio and like overlay during the game. You can't pause and give me 3 commercials in a row or 5 commercials, right? Because I'll just turn it off. Like you have to say like, well, this is going to be it, and you could even just time the games. Whichever team ends up winning or scoring the most points in 10 minutes, right? Because like their defense is going to be on the field and your offense is going to be on the field. Like you're going to have your own defense, you're going to have your own offense. So you could both play at the same time. Like both offenses going. I don't know how that would work on TV. But like that might help teams like throwing the ball up, trying to go deep or whatever. I don't know. But it would take a couple of years, I think, to get mixed in. But you have any other ideas for them?
No.
The only other NFL thing I had that I wanted to mention, additional facts have come out in the Dwayne Haskins accident. He was drunk, which I know a lot of people attacked Adam Schefter because of his initial tweet that said something about like his poor decision making, or like wasn't it like, or he didn't play well in the NFL or something like that. And then a lot of people were attacking pundits for calling out like his poor decision making, but dude, he was 3 times over the legal limit. And there was another woman in his car that was supposedly passed out drunk at the time.
That was not his wife.
That was not his wife. So he got out of the car to call his wife, right? Because he was there. I mean, that's the 911 call, is that she was on the phone when he got hit, I think. And apparently they said that he had run up and down like the highway a couple of different times. When I saw the initial like helicopter view, the exit's right there, or at least there's one. I would assume there'd be a gas station unless they're like in the middle of like complete nowhere or like some type of other turning ramp. So I'm not sure where he would be running back and forth to, you know? So it's crazy. Apparently, like he had a fight with the guy that he was out with. That's what they're saying. And that's why he left the drunk or whatever. But still, man, you're in the NFL. You're trying to make a roster. You got to make better decisions, man. Pay for an Uber, right?
Yes.
I mean, you ran out of gas, and the circumstances were rough to begin with. But nothing came out to make it look better. So, hate to see a guy go out like that. And, I mean, these are young guys at this point. He was only 20-something. Like early 20s, because he had just graduated or left Ohio State anyway. I don't know if he graduated for real or not. But that's what happened. There might be additional details, but definitely sad to see that play a part in it. And I almost wonder, like, what else could he have done to not have that happen? Or at least even been in that scenario, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like I've said before, I hate stopping on the road. I think, did I mention this before? I saw a guy pull over with his family. They were all the way up in the tree line. And at first I was like thinking, what would you be doing? Like, why would you drive your car all the way up there? And now I'm like, that makes sense. Like someone just texting and driving on the side of the road and hits you. So, rough. But that's all I had for the NFL. You have anything else, Matt?
No.
All right. Go ahead. I know you're going to have to defend your boy here, Jimbo. But Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban have been calling each other out in the media over NIL. And the latest that came out that's already been denied by the player. But one of Texas A&M's players said that they were going to sit out the Senior Bowl or one of those bowl games or whatever. Or would it be the All-American high school game?
No, it was the Big 33. He's out of Philadelphia.
Okay, yeah, the Big 33. Because he's a Pennsylvania guy. So he's going to sit out because they would cut his NIL money if he plays because he could get hurt. So then they're like, well, no, that's not true. And this is after Jimbo said that his guys don't have NIL deals. They're coming in because they love Texas A&M, Matt. They just love it there. Everything's above board. They're not getting money. Come on. They keep sending him pictures of their recruiting classes, how he's only ever had like 1 or 2 5-stars. I think it was like 3 or 4 total in his time at A&M. And then this past year, he had 7. Like when NIL started, they just miraculously get 7 5-star guys and the best class of all time. Even though what, they're not even winning?
They're winning in the classroom.
Matt, A&M, like if you're looking back, they haven't really won anything. So like for them to be getting this type of recruiting class, it's honestly unbelievable. And so everyone knows that they had some NIL deal. Now, whether it's legal or not, I don't even know. Because that's what's going to happen whenever they look back at this. I don't think the NCAA is going to do anything, right? Because they really can't. They had the chance to come out and say, hey, this is the NIL guidelines. And they never did. Like, they never did. So just to give you a little rundown, A&M, since they joined the Big 12 in 1996, they won their division twice. And this includes the SEC. So they have 2 division titles and 1 conference title. In what, like 25 years or so, however long that is? That would be like Northwestern. Like Northwestern has a couple Big Ten titles. Or hell, even Illinois, like they had some back in the day. Because A&M hasn't had one for a long time. Like in the SEC, the best they've finished is 2nd in the West. Not overall, just 2nd in the West. So that would be like Northwestern or Illinois or someone in the Big Ten that never wins, just miraculously getting 7 5-stars. People would be like, what in the hell? Like the NCAA would bring the ban hammer down so fast on them that, like, I don't even know what they would be thinking about. Because, like, honestly, Northwestern just played in the Big Ten championship game. I know they got smoked by Ohio State, but A&M has never played in the SEC championship game. They barely played in the Big 12 one. And so it would be, like, very similar. Like, you can't be like, oh, well, Northwestern, they're never as good as A&M. It's like, no, they might even be better than A&M. Especially with Pat Fitzgerald there, right? So I wouldn't, if Northwestern came out and had the number one class, I'd be like so amazed at first because the Big Ten recruiting isn't that good. I mean, because like I'm trying to think of other comparisons. I mean, I can't even use like Pitt or someone because Pitt just won the ACC. I mean, the last A&M conference championship was 1998, Matt.
Well, I think one of the ones you could use is Ole Miss because Ole Miss was typically bad, and then all of a sudden just started reeling in all those recruits. It was like, I wonder how they're pulling in these number one overall players.
Yep, and then they got sanctioned, right? They had like 3 coaches go through sanctions, didn't they? Who was before you freeze? Wasn't that the Blindside guy? Or was there even another guy before that?
I don't know.
Because like the Blindside movie was kind of about that, right? Them just paying to bring in big guys, and then it never really even panned out for them. So I think you're going to see this a lot more with money. Saban pretending like he's clean is unbelievable to me because they went from losing to like what, Louisiana Monroe in his first year to like starting to just bring in the number one class, and then they won a couple of championships. So now recently he might not have to pay guys with the NIL, right? Because it's already been done. Like, they're so set in their way. Same with Clemson. I think that's why Dabo is kind of upset about it. Like, you can't tell me Clemson didn't beat South Carolina for 6 years or whatever, and then they just start randomly bringing in these top recruits, right? Because, like, they were losing them to South Carolina when Spurrier was there. And so I think they probably started their payment plan, their payment program or whatever. I mean, Rashawn Gary, first-round draft pick out of Michigan to the Green Bay Packers, he said that, like, they were offering his family money, and no one really said anything about it. Like, at the last second, Clemson comes out of nowhere and is like, oh, yeah, the number one overall guy might just come to Clemson for some random reason, Matt. Because I think that was before their championships. So, like, if he's coming out and saying, like, well, Clemson came on strong, they really put out a strong offer, Matt, and his family came out and said, like, yeah, they were offering money, and the NCAA didn't even look at it. And it would have been a shame, like, for Michigan to lose a guy like that, just because they were paying or whatever. Now, I think you see those coaches realize that, like, hey, we used to be bold enough to do that. Now everyone's just paying. So now they have to start either paying more or paying, like, if they've gotten away from it. Like, let's say Saban really did get away from it. Because, like, you can't tell me Alabama wasn't paying guys. They were already on sanctions for it. Right? In the 90s, they were on sanctions for paying guys. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's been in their DNA. Same with Clemson. Their 82 championship or whatever that one was, that one was tainted, and didn't they get the ban hammer? Like, I thought they got some sanctions after that, and then they kind of disappeared. That's why their program disappeared. So that's going to be something that we're looking at over time. Like, what can happen in the future, like, for these other programs? Is it going to be sustainable? Because I don't know if we mentioned this off the air because we were hanging out a bit this weekend. I don't know if, like, Tennessee last week, if I brought up that there are rumors that, like, they're throwing around $5 million for their class. Like, are they going to be able to do that every year? Because that could change the balance of the SEC, right?
Yeah,
because
definitely.
If they're swinging money around, and there was another team, was it Florida? There were 2 teams that were kind of linked, where they were like, hey, we're getting this many, we have an NIL fund, and we're going to pay for our guys to do scholarships or whatever $5 million here, $3 million, whatever it is. And if they can do that per year, awesome. I did have another thing here. So the TV contracts came out. And let me see if I can even find it, because I think I forgot to send it to you. The only one I don't have from USA Today is the SEC. I don't think they're in here. But just to kind of give you an idea, like the ACC paid out, this is from 2020. It's usually like a year behind. They paid out $38.1 million per member, right? The Big 12 paid out at the top $36.5 million. So that's even lower than the ACC. And they're going to be losing Texas and Oklahoma. All right. The Big 10 paid out for their regular members $49.1 million. So let's say the Big 10 schools, they decide as a conference that they're going to take the $10 million they made more than the ACC and just start an NIL fund with it. Right? Because they could do that. Maybe not per the fund or whatever, but I'm pretty sure they can pay for scholarships now. They can pay for additional stipends. They can pay. There's like another thing that they could have paid that comes out. But like, that's a real scenario. The Pac-12 didn't really say what they made. And so they were the lowest by a significant margin. Because they canceled their football season, remember?
Yeah.
So, like, they did that, and then they had it. So, it doesn't really say how much they made from that, because let me see if it's at the top. But the Big Ten's also getting a share from, like, their new bids, where Fox is really going to bid for them and go above and beyond, like, what the other rumors were, like Apple TV or whatever. They're going to have a big chunk of change. I don't see... Even if the NCAA steps in and says, like, hey, the school itself can't fund NIL, they're making so much money from the TV network that I can tell. I could see them telling the boosters, like, no, start a fund like Tennessee. Instead of paying us $20 million or whatever for like that new practice facility, we'll use our Big Ten network money for that. You guys help pay for the fund. And then I think like you're going to see a gigantic advantage. Now, whether it pays off, like where it's really just the SEC and the Big Ten making $10 plus million more than the other conferences, I don't know. Will you see like a tiered system where the Big 12 completely falls off, or the Pac-12 continues to fall off, where it's like the Big Ten, the Big Ten and the SEC at the top, the ACC firmly number 3, and then those other two conferences are kind of battling for scraps, I guess? I don't know. Because like they keep talking about, oh, Lincoln Riley's going to be out here. Lincoln Riley is going to be doing so many good things at USC. Show me, right? Because if your school's making so much less than these other ones, I think it's going to be an anomaly that they'll be able to compete, right? Kids aren't going to play for an empty stadium. I saw one of the guys, they said that it was a USC player from like 2013. He had said that like every school southeast of Texas, which in reality doesn't really make sense because Texas is pretty far south. But I think he was kind of pointing out the SEC, saying that they all offered him money to even go on a tour. Like they were paying him $10,000 to just show up and take a visit there. Okay, cool. But then another guy that went to USC said, well, the one thing that really almost swayed me away from USC is like the other schools, had football fans. Like they had fans in the stands. People cared. The stadium experience is so much better. And at a certain point, you can put Lincoln Riley out there. If no one's watching on TV, no one's going to the games, they're not making the money. Are boosters really going to be pumped to keep throwing money at recruits? And are recruits really going to pay off, Because like at a certain point, are you going to be able to get back to that Pete Carroll era? Maybe not. Maybe not, especially if Notre Dame keeps joining more games against like the ACC and stuff. Will the USC Notre Dame game be that big of a game compared to if Florida State bounces back or Miami takes off with this stuff, or hell, even Clemson again. Like you throw Notre Dame against one of those schools that are actually relevant. I mean, Lincoln Riley, I think, is going to have a very short timeline to get things rolling. Because if they start losing a couple games, it's going to be like Clay Helton again, where they get the media hype. No one watches their games or anything. And I think that has to hurt recruiting.
Yeah.
Like, they can get the bump because of the Cali kids and, like, they're getting the best of the West. Like, okay, cool. But once again, if they're not delivering, and some of those guys are still going to go to Alabama. I mean, Michigan still gets guys from California. Ohio State still gets guys from California. They're not going to get their pick of the litter anymore, especially if some of these schools are throwing around $5 million, right? I mean, I think that's why Tennessee had that home and home with UCLA. I think that was them. Like, they know that there's guys out there that they can just pull right out of the Pac-12 and make that conference weaker. And hell, even if he does win the Pac-12 with USC, something that they haven't really done recently, they might still get pasted in the playoffs because of that talent. Like, if you can't land a complete team on the West, because these other programs have been ingrained now for over a decade of picking your guys. Like Najee Harris, he's from out there, I think. He wasn't even considering USC. He was down between Michigan and Alabama. Like, right? So, like, even a couple of the guys, like the running back that was at UCLA last year, like, he's from California, didn't really make it at Michigan. And he just shows back up at UCLA. Like, I think you're going to have guys like that go east, go to the bigger schools, and then USC has to compete with that. So even if they're landing a top class, I think it's going to be very tough for them. And there's even rumors that they're begging to possibly join the Big Ten, which I said could be a big deal. I don't know, though, because the Pac-12 did vote to get rid of divisions to basically help Oregon and to help USC, I think, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, how many times has Oregon been close? Weren't they pretty good that year that Washington went to the playoffs? And they don't get the rematch. And maybe I'm wrong there. I'd have to look at the years because I could have my years mixed up. But you have a Pac-12 where your best team has to be in that conference championship, and maybe recently they haven't been. Utah was pretty good last year. Do they have the horses to get it done? They gave Ohio State a good game. Oregon had beat Ohio State. That's some of your best talent right there.
Yeah.
I mean, Ohio State's always loaded.
Well, I think the one thing when you're looking at how some of this plays out, I mean, I think it just goes back to like this Saban and Jimbo thing that they coach together at LSU, so it's not like they're hiding a lot of secrets from each other. Like they both know how these things operate, and I will throw it out there that I'm sure that at some point they were doing that. They're following what the NCAA guidelines are. However, there's also that gray area where within our program and within our university, we're not doing this. But what's to stop this Joe Booster who has no affiliation to the university that just says, "Hey, I'm gonna invite this kid out and wine him and dine him and do all this other stuff that as a private citizen can just do whatever he wants, and I don't have any affiliation to the university." You see a lot of those scenarios where they're reaching out to parents, they're helping family members out with things like, "Hey, you steer the kid to this university and there's more money coming your way." That is it shady? Absolutely. But is it within the guidelines of what the NCAA deems allowable? Well, yeah. Like they've found where those loopholes are and gotten around them. I mean, I think that's the one thing that has kind of separated the Sabans and Jimbo Fishers from everyone else, because they know where those lines are and they know where the gray areas are, and they're able to find the loopholes to get around it. And I think it's only made worse by the fact that you look at how bad Saban complained about Hugh Freeze's up-tempo offense and Gus Malzahn's up-tempo. And he pitched this big fit to the NCAA about how that wasn't right. And then what did he do? He went right around and used the same rules to win a handful of more national championships using that same, like some of that similar stuff. So it's like he belly aches to get a clear definition of where the line is and then pushes the issue. So I see a lot of where we're trying to get a clear stance on what the NILs are. And you kind of saw the writing on the wall based off of what was going on with Jimbo. He was saying that a lot of these other programs, the lure for recruiting is in the infrastructure. And one of the reasons he went, aside from the gazillion dollars that A&M threw at him, was that they were willing to invest in the on-campus stuff. So when you have a lot of those extra, like, when you're choosing between some of these Power 5 programs, a lot of it, you're comparing, what's going to send you to one school over another. If they're all offering full scholarships, if they're all offering some type of NIL deal, unless you're in an extreme situation, what's $3 million compared to $5 million? I mean, you're still changing the trajectory of your entire family. So, are some of those campus type things going to make your life better? Is it going to help you out as an individual player? Like, I think that's where you're starting to split some of the hairs now with the recruiting aspect.
Well, you made a good point about those different infrastructure things, and one of the things I think really stood out to me recently, I had an article, and I actually forgot to send it to you. And your point about that reminded me that I saw Iowa State, their boosters were kind of up in arms about being shut out of some of the southern Texas and Louisiana type recruiting grounds, right? And they had made a point that it really started to happen not when Texas and Oklahoma were leaving the Big 12. Before that, whenever the SEC and the ACC kind of tightened down over Harbaugh's, what were they, the satellite camps, which was surprising to me because I had kind of forgotten about them. So then I see this, like Iowa State, where they're saying, like, hey, we were teaming up with Michigan and Texas and Louisiana or wherever. I think were the two states. I could be wrong. And immediately, like, you're getting access to high schools there. And, like, let's be honest, Iowa State's not going to pull the guy that Alabama's going for, right? But there are a couple of guys that you're able to, see in person, scout, get to know their coaches, where they're going to say, like, hey, this guy could probably play D1. He might end up walking on at A&M or something, but maybe if you guys offer him a scholarship, he'd go to Iowa State. And then they're going to be able to build that depth, right? Because it's one of the frustrating things to me with Pitt. It's like, hey, you're letting all these Pittsburgh guys, or not even Pittsburgh, even Philly guys, you're letting them go around and go to Georgia or go to wherever. And they're like, yeah, but we're focused on Florida. It's like, you can do both. You can do both, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to just be focused on Florida. And so that's where, when I saw the Iowa State thing, I was like, I guess that really makes sense because they were inviting, it wasn't just a Michigan-only thing. They were supposed to be joint practices and everything. And a lot of even the SEC teams were teaming up and saying, like, well, if you're going to be in our state, we're going to be there with you because we don't want you poking around. Because if they do have boosters or whatever paying some of these, think of like the AAU, right? How does the AAU make money? Oh, yeah, from the shoe deals they're getting. And what do the shoe deals do? Push guys to certain colleges. Everyone knows that. They've been doing it since the 80s. So I think college football, they're getting a similar type system in place with these NILs now, where if you sign for a deal for like a shoe or whatever you end up doing, is it going to be tied to the school? The NCAA is trying to say no. There are some schools that are trying to push back and say, we'll just leave and have our own rules. Where because they're guaranteed, they don't want to be spending money to pay for a recruit that's only going to have them transfer somewhere else,
Well, and that was one of the things that I saw early with those NILs, and I believe with how they were talking about it was even with A&M, where they were saying, well, that's not just going to be a one-time payout. It was going to be like something that can be renewable over the course of their experience to kind of reduce some of the transfer portal stuff. You brought up Pitt, and I just had that argument over the weekend with my dad because he was like, I'm so disgusted with Addison making his decision that he's going to USC. He's like, I don't even know if I want to watch college football this year. And I said, well, look at Pitt. Like, just take for all the stuff with Pitt, they don't have the 5-star guys that are going to be attracted to the Clemsons, the Florida States, the Miamis, the UNCs that are in the ACC just within the conference. Pitt won the ACC with a bunch of 3- and 4-star guys. Like they're not a star-studded team that I think that in some aspects the transfer portal can work for them because they can take a guy, like they can take some of those players maybe from Akron or from that are out there in the portal that they have some tape that they can say, okay, we have a relationship with this player. Maybe they don't sign with us initially, but we can kind of regroup with them a year or two down the line and catch them back in the portal. Like that's going to be where some of those players are find a landing spot because you're not winning the AC, you're not winning a conference championship unless you have some talent around you. And I think that consistency within the coaching staff helps. And that's where you're going to see now, can Pitt continue to win? If they can continue to show that they're pushing for ACC championships, they may have the potential to take that next step. And now a local kid that's on the fence of, do I commit to another ACC school? And say, well, you can play all those guys and you can stay right here at home. And you're going to compete not only for the conference championship, but we're going to be vying for the playoffs. I compare it almost to what was going on in Georgia. How long did Georgia they were just a winning program. They just won with Mark Richt, and they were, 9-10 win teams, and they ran them out of town, and then brought Kirby Smart in, and magically he starts pulling in these top talented classes after working with Saban. I mean, is there a correlation between those guys working for Saban and suddenly knowing all the ins and outs of how to pull those top classes in? Like, I don't think Georgia was setting the world on fire with their recruiting.
Nah, they weren't. And that's going to be one of the things that I think they look at. Because when Saban came in, he was always bitching about Urban Meyer at Florida, even though he only ended up being against him, a couple years.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that kind of pushed him out or whatever, because he had that health issue before he went to the booth. And then miraculously ended up at Ohio State before now. It's like a crazy thing. But to your point, look at Michigan State. They only take transfers, Matt. They're not recruiting with Penn State, Michigan, or Ohio State. They're not even close. They basically built their team last year on transfers. Even their Heisman Trophy guy that was in the mix, Walker, transferred from Wake Forest, right? The ACC. So Pitt can easily take over and say, if that's going to be our thing, that's going to be our thing. Let's try to take advantage of it. And like I had said, start using the city more. I see NC State down here doing it more. Where you go down the city, I don't really see any UNC stuff. Is it going to pay off in terms of basketball? Maybe. Is it going to pay off in terms of other sports, football and stuff? Probably. Because you get more kids seeing that stuff growing up, and you have that. And it's kind of like building those inroads to where, if you live in Tennessee, are you really going to see a lot of Vanderbilt stuff growing up? Nah. So, in Pennsylvania, Penn State is everywhere now, where I think not even way back, but 30 years ago, I would think that it was an even split between Pitt and Penn State. And Penn State's taking advantage of, they're everywhere. Pitt's kind of taking that back seat where they're focused, like, we're going to focus on basketball. That's the future, blah, blah. Football is not that big. And now I think they're probably regretting that because Penn State's clearly the number one football program in the state. They've marketed themselves as that. They haven't cared about basketball at all, right? So, like, I mean, I guess they were in that Adidas thing about paying recruits for basketball, so that's insane since they have had no results from that. But football, that's what I'm looking at. Like, what are you going to do to help your team? Is it going to be transfers? I don't think that's a bad idea. But you got to be able to take that and go above. Now, for the division thing, if the ACC gets away from that, that definitely hurts Pitt. I mean, I don't think how you can see it any other way. If someone would go ahead and do like the showcase weekend, that's what the Big Ten had called it, apparently. I forgot that they were going to do that during the COVID year, but they were going to have every team play, right? Where the top teams avoid the matchup, like I had said. I don't think you need to do that. I still think if you take the top 4 teams right now with an 8-team playoff, or even like it's only a 14 playoff right now, but if it goes to only an 8-team, which is what the rumor is, you're putting yourself into a position where your showcase weekend, those top two teams that win have a good chance of both making it to the playoffs. And if the ACC, because like that, if they go to only the top 2 teams play, and they somehow let Notre Dame even sneak in there, then you're going to get Clemson, Notre Dame, maybe Florida State if they bounce back, or Miami, same thing. I think you might have another team in the mix every once in a while, like UNC, Virginia Tech, maybe Pitt. The rest of the teams, no dice, no chance. Because like I saw a prediction next year where someone had NC State in the top 10, and it made me laugh. Because there's no way. I think they had him even ahead of Michigan. And I was like, did you see the people that Michigan have returning? Like, you're not going to compete. You could say, like, yeah, they lost their 2 defensive ends, but when has Michigan's defense really dropped off? Never. So, like, I don't know how you could look at that team and say, well, you don't really have the talent, but definitely a top 10 team, you know? And that's not a slight on them. That's where you're gonna fill those holes you had last year, right? You didn't even win the conference. If they were conference champs and everyone came back, I could see it. But nah, didn't happen. So where are you gonna go from there? And I'm hoping that they figure something out. I had this insane Penn State fan say that, oh well, Michigan only beat Ohio State last year because Ohio State had coaching issues. If they didn't have coaching issues, Ohio State wins 100%. I'm like, Michigan's team was very good last year. Ohio State's team, their recruiting has kind of left a bunch of holes. They're still recruiting top talent. But if you look at their recruiting classes, Matt, they're pulling like 4 top receivers every year. They've kind of abandoned the, hey, let's get big in the trenches, you know? And that's a shift from Urban Meyer to Ryan Day. So is that going to continue in that direction? Because if Wisconsin takes that blueprint that Michigan used, if Penn State takes that blueprint that Michigan used, if some of these other Iowa big running teams take that, Ohio State might run into some trouble, right?
Guess what? It's the same blueprint that I've laid out for you. If you watch how fast your team goes directly, that 100%, that's the fastest way to get your ass kicked, is to have offensive line issues and defensive line issues. And look no further than what happened to Florida State. They whiffed for several classes in a row on offensive line, and scheme up what you want, it didn't matter because they just got absolutely throttled because it turned into you don't even get 3 seconds, you get 2, and the quarterback's getting thumped.
Well, honestly, I saw that and I was kind of shocked because I thought if they were really having coaching issues, they would have been like an 8 or 9 win team, right? You don't go almost perfect if your coaching is that bad.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like Penn State was killing them. Like, Michigan State came in there, and this was before Michigan gave them the blueprint. And it's another downside of, like, Michigan playing them late in the year, where Michigan State could have did the same thing Michigan did, grind the ball. What did they do? Tried to play up tempo. Matt, that game was 49-0 at halftime. So like I'm watching that and I'm like, well, Michigan State, they're never going to be anywhere near the playoffs now. Because you can't get that much of a beatdown and expect people to vote you in over Michigan even though you beat them. Right there, there was no chance. And so I see people saying, well, Michigan State, they're a better team than Michigan coming back next year. It's like, are they? Because that's the one game that stood out to me against the Ohio State team where it's like, Michigan State was all transfers. They didn't have the depth to compete. You can win one game if you get lucky. But whenever you're losing that bad, like that's insane. Like I don't remember Penn State ever having a blowout loss that bad. Michigan's never been down 49-0 at half. I don't even think Florida State's been bad. They have never been down 49-0 at half, right?
Recently there's been some pretty rough games.
Yeah, but that's pretty bad, Matt, where the game's over at halftime and your husband contending running back has like 5 carries where you're like, let's do nothing that we're good at. That'll work. That'll work. So I don't know. We'll get some more information on this stuff coming back because I think all these conferences are declaring that they're not going to do it, and yet we don't have any details on how they're actually going to make it work. Like, are they going to all do the 3? Because like if every conference gets together and does 8 conference games where you have 3 rivals and 5 open, then I think we'll start to see some parity across college football because for the past 20 years, the schedules have been imbalanced. SEC has played less games, which means more wins because they're playing one more cupcake game. If the other conferences start to do the same thing, does it inflate their records? Because everyone knows, like, if you get a Big Ten team like Iowa or Wisconsin that travels at 11 wins, man, the bowl committees are like, they're having heart palpitations because they want to get them in there. They're like, Citrus Bowl? Holy shit, get Iowa down here now. They'll sell out that stadium. Like, get Wisconsin down here. Because if you're telling them, hey, we have an 11-win Iowa here, or an 11-win Wake Forest, because didn't Wake Forest have something like that last year? There's no doubt in my mind that Iowa would get the pick. Like, there's no way they would pick Wake Forest over them. And so you're looking at that. And so I think the Big Ten, that's one of the things that where everyone's like, well, Delaney did such a great job. It's like, imagine how much better they would have been in television money if their teams had, let's say, not even every team wins their other cupcake game, but every team has, like the conference as a whole has 8 more wins a year because they're not playing each other. Right?
Yeah.
Amazing. I guess it wouldn't be that much. So it would be like +4 probably. Because like you'd still have the 7 other wins, but you still have the 7 other losses or whatever they are. That's what I want to see. Speaking of expansion, though, Fox, there's some documents that kind of leaked out. I don't know how legit these are. They're looking at expanding the USFL. So they must be watching the XFL and seeing how their partnership's going. Because the rumors are, right now, what do they have, 8 teams?
Yes.
So the rumors are that they're looking to add teams immediately. Didn't say how many. And then sell the league. Which to me, it's like, all right, who are you selling to? Right?
And what are you selling?
Yeah, what are you selling? The only thing that makes sense is if they see the XFL has 8 teams, and then they're like, well, we already have 8 teams. What if we add another 8 teams or something to get to 24? Or hell, even what if the XFL comes out with like even more teams? But I'm wondering if Fox is looking at it and thinking, well, the NFL, if this is going to be like a minor league for the NFL, do we need to have each team with a minor league team? Right?
Yeah.
That's the only thought process that I can come up with where they need expansion. And that would also make sense with travel. That would make sense with having teams work guys out, you know? Guys could come in and they're working out in the spring. So they'll be with the pro team the entire time. maybe it helps with like expansion and like getting some money for some of these guys where you want them to play, you want them to stay in game shape. You don't want them to just be riding the pine like as a running back for 2 years because they're going to get out of game speed, right? So by keeping this around, maybe you're able to extend with all these injuries that have been happening and have guys that are ready and not like 3 years removed from the league. But like, what's T.O. doing right now? I heard he raised Tyreek Hill. Like, let's get him in here. Like, they might just have a wide receiver that's ready to go, that's kind of connected to their playbook, which is interesting. Because if you do the minor league thing, are you going to be running a similar style? Because the NFL is kind of a copycat league anyway. To me, I think that would be boring. We've always talked about how we want to see more dynamic offenses and unique play styles. If it becomes like a 32-team minor league, will I really care at that point? I might care a little bit more, you know? Because, like, as a Packers owner, Matt, then do I own the Packers minor league team? Because that's a legit question, man. Like, what's happening? Is Fox owning these minor league teams, or is, like, whatever television network? Because ideally, are they getting ready to sell them to ESPN?
Well, I think maybe you push it so that the USFL gets absorbed into the XFL, and then if they're going to just treat that as a minor league, maybe they go that route. I mean, to me, that almost makes sense where you're saying, okay, these are going to be spring league players for our fall team, and you're still able to have, you know, those players are either practice squad or like they're part of your franchise still, so that you can say, all right, well, they're on my spring league team. Like, you can still claim them and kind of expand your roster by proxy. They're still staying like conditioning and doing stuff so that if an injury happens, maybe you see some parallels in offense and scheme going that route, and maybe that helps in some ways because they're going to have similar stuff, so that gap between spring league and fall in the NFL season is going to be a little bit similar.
I look at it like my boy Ajabo, right? Tears his Achilles. The Ravens take a pick at him. He's not going to play at all this year, right? He was already a raw prospect coming in. If the Ravens had a spring team, I would see them 100% having him play next spring, right? That would give him almost a full year to recover. And if it is in the April or whenever they decide, then he would have had over a year to recover. He plays in a couple games. Maybe they don't play him in every game because, like the minor leagues, you know, like a guy usually rehabs for 3 games or 2 games or whatever. Have him come in, say, like, we picked you pretty high in the second round. We want to see you perform at this level, kind of get up to speed, get comfortable, because these guys are going to be a little bit lesser talent. We don't want you to come out here and really push yourself again in the NFL and re-hurt your Achilles, right? Because that's a major injury. So I think that a situation like that would be very helpful. Some of the other guys that also like have big-time injuries, maybe they play for a game or 2, which I also think helps the visibility of the game and kind of goes there. Like, remember when David Johnson was jumping out of pools? Like, wouldn't you feel a lot better as a Texas fan if you saw him play in the spring game and he racked up like 200 yards? And you're like, oh, my boy's back. Hell, he wouldn't even have to play the whole game. They let him play for a quarter and say, like, hey, go head out there. Or like Antonio Brown's been saying how he wants to retire a Steeler. Could you imagine if the Steelers signed him and made him play in the spring game? In their spring league? Like, hey, you want to really play for us? Like, let's see you do it. Like, Le'Veon Bell was kind of playing around, and he never really got an opportunity, right? I don't know how they would handle vets. I think it would be more of like young guys coming in. Maybe they get injured in college, like another Michigan guy, Jake Butt. Remember when he got hurt in the Orange Bowl? I don't think he really played that first year because of that injury. But give these rookie guys, and I know that those aren't the only ones that have been injured coming in. There are others that got injured. Let's see what happens, and let's give them a run. Like, McCaffrey didn't play at all this year, really. Oh, what if they gave him like a 1 game, hey, you're going to play a few series in this minor league game? I think that would be good for both. I really do. Like, hey, we signed you to this gigantic contract. Now all the contracts have language in it where we can delegate you to the minor league team and you have to play. Otherwise, your contract's void. Because, like, if I were the Panthers and I watched McCaffrey not play for how many, like 2 years in a row now, I'd want to see him play in the spring. Not every game, because that's idiotic. But I'd want to see him show up and actually show his acceleration and stuff. Because if he's looking slow against, like, the spring team players, then I will know, like, hey, we got to cut you, man. And we have cause now because you played and you looked like shit. And then, like, where are they going to go from that? I don't know how many other guys, like, they could really do that to, but I think with the way injuries are happening and guys have these guaranteed big contracts or whatever, where they're making all this money and then they're not playing, I think it would give the NFL another opportunity to see some of them play. And I don't think you're going to see them, like, really try to hurt their own players, right? Like, they're not going to rehab their best guys. Like, Joe Burrow got injured or whatever. I really don't know if they would have even threw him in there because he was too high of a pick. But I think it's going to be your mid-round guys or guys that fell like a Jabo did out of the first round this year, injured. There was another, was it a lineman? Who did we talk about on the draft night? I can't remember his name now. But they had rumors that he was injured, and then someone drafted him early, and it's like, okay, is that a bad pick? Is he really injured? If he misses the entire year and you have nowhere for him to even, like, rehab and play again, what happens? Like, I think you could see a good space for some of these guys that come in, and even guys that are changing positions too, right? Because if they did have it after April, where the USFL is right now, and maybe that's kind of where Fox is kind of heading, to like show the XFL, like, hey, we're going to expand. You should play now because guys that get drafted that are maybe switching positions, they can jump right in and show what they got. Maybe we have a guy that can't really pass the ball like a Denard Robinson. We want to run him at running back. We drafted him late. He jumps right into the spring game, the spring league, USFL, XFL, whatever you want to call it, and he tears it up. Then they know. Or he looks awful. Then they know. You know? Then they can make some of these cuts before they even get to practice. And I know Denard hung around the league for a while, so it's not like he was garbage. He was actually pretty good. So I think that's where they want to go. That's kind of where I want to see it. You have anything else there?
No, I think that's it.
I had on here real quick. This could be my final bell. The NHL and NBA playoffs. Hurricanes, man, have been trying to see if they can go the distance. The Panthers got swept, and they had the best record, so they were the team that would have taken the home ice advantage away from Carolina. I think Carolina gets it now, and they've looked so bad on the road. They got killed tonight, 4-1, I think. I had it up, and then dudes were fighting after. I don't know what happened since we were doing this show. But I don't know if a team can go only winning at home and looking awful on the road to winning the cup. Like in Tampa Bay is the other team. They already advanced there. They swept the Panthers, and they've been there. So they have that gritty playoff experience to where if Carolina's going to make a push, and they're playing the Rangers, and I thought the Penguins, because I thought the Penguins looked so good before Sid's injury that they would have beat the Canes, and they would have already been in the Eastern Finals. It might have been a close series, but the Penguins were definitely better than the Rangers to me. And I was arguing with some Penguins fan over the weekend. Is like, oh yeah, the Penguins they were really down. What game were you watching? I'm like, they were killing them, and then Sid got injured, and then they lost. It's very easy to follow. I don't know what you don't understand. Like they had a big lead. He gets the hit, takes the wind out of their sails. They go down, lose the next game, and then lose that next game. They're up 3-1. What are you talking about? The Penguins were outplayed in that series, man. So that's where it's like I watch that, and then the Hurricanes are kind of just like on the road. We're not going to show up at all. Like it takes a dude, even if the fans are so mad they're breaking the glass and hurting one of their own officials, doesn't even matter. Like they're not going to get the job done. But In the NBA, I had on here, same old, Matt. The Golden State Warriors are looking great. I think they're about to eliminate the Mavs if they haven't already. I don't know if they played tonight or not. And then the Celtics and the Heat, I don't think it's going to matter. I think I've been talking about how the top seeds are going to win it all the time. I think the Warriors are going to get it done just based on their history and like Jordan Poole showing up. I know he played at Michigan, and I would never have expected this, where he's like dominating to such a level that like him and Steph Curry can just shoot 100 threes a game, and you can't stop it.
Just keep shooting.
Like if you get 3 Splash Brothers in there, Matt, how are you going to stop that? Like that's the only reason the Celtics won last night, because they were shooting threes the entire time, and they were up by like 30 points. And every game in that series, someone had a 20-point lead, they said. So it's like, are you going to outshoot the Warriors? No. So what is your strategy if the series you're in right now is, hey, let's see who gets the hottest?
I'm going to shoot more.
Yeah, that's all they're doing. So I hope the Celtics win. I was hoping, my brother plays the Mavs. I was hoping to get a Celtics-Mavs final, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen. Because that would have been funny. I've been talking mad trash, just like I did when Michigan played Tennessee in the tournament. Sam Brother, I was talking mad trash on him. The memes, I don't know if I've been able to find a lot of Dallas Maverick memes.
Oh, I'm sure you will, because the amount of Tennessee stuff that you were pulling was ridiculous.
Well, it's very easy because Alabama hates Tennessee, so their fans make a lot of stuff. So when it's very easy whenever the school's out there. I don't know if a lot of teams hate the Mavs. Like if it was the Lakers, that'd have been easy. The Mavs, though, I think a lot of people like them because Dirk was a class act. And then Mark Cuban, a lot of people like him for some reason. Shark Tank. But that's all I have. Have anything on those 2 playoffs?
No, not really.
All right, you got anything for the final bell?
Just survived the final frontier, T-ball. So T-ball season's in big swing, so survived my first game.
And you're playing?
Yes, as a coach.
I thought you meant... Yeah, I mean, you could have been in an adult T-ball league.
Hey, had dirt thrown on me, just surviving, just fighting for my life.
The question is, did you throw your book?
No, didn't even have a book.
You didn't get ejected or anything?
No, I think there would have been a harsher penalty to be like, you have to coach more games.
I know the youth teams, man, because I used to coach them when my brother was growing up too, and I'd be like, anytime you had one kid that could even do anything remotely close to what he's supposed to do, that would pretty much be the whole team. He'd carry the team. If you had like 2 or 3, you're probably going to win the championship. So It's all about getting the kids to kind of pay attention, not kick dirt, not draw their name in the sand. And you hope that they don't get hit with the ball in the head because they're not paying attention. Because that's my biggest fear as coach. Are you out in the field with them on the hot corner?
Oh, yeah.
Kicking the kid, saying, yo, look up.
Hey, you got to look.
Because Urban Meyer said he's the coach. He's allowed to kick the players, Matt. So if you follow his lead, you'll get those kids whipped into shape.
But, very much so.
All right, that's all I have. You got anything else?
Nope. Check out southboundsports.com.
Yep. Check it out. Subscribe to the show. Tell your friends, and we'll see you next week.